The Witcher made his way back down the dusty road. Fortunately for the caravan, the only thing awaiting them was a steady supply of animal remains strewn across fields, their bones picked clean, victims of the drought he suspected. The poor bastards. He approached the inn at the crossroads. The caravan should have arrived by now, and would no doubt stay for the night. Then, just half a day more and they'd be at Maribor City. He furrowed his brow, contemplating. Why even come this far after already collecting his coin? His employer was dead, and he no longer had any obligation. At least not a professional one. He hawked and spat into the dirt. Just a way to kill time, he concluded. It's just something to do. As he neared the inn, he saw familiar horses and wagons out front, as expected. But the scene was off. Something was not quite right. He trotted over carefully and surveyed the indentations of the disturbed dirt from horseback, then slid from his saddle and crouched to get a closer look. Some sort of struggle, he deduced. Specks of dried blood, no doubt about it. He frowned. Fuck. The Witcher threw his steed a casual command, stay, then strode towards the inn. Outside, a burly man in a dirty yellow tunic was hunched on a bench, playing with a dagger and glaring at the approaching Witcher. He stood up and puffed out his chest. Sorry, chum, we're closed. He ignored the warning and continued. The dull-looking man stepped in front of the door, blocking the way. You looking for a beating? I said we're fucking... Without hesitation, the Witcher launched his fist into the man's gut, dropping him to the ground. Winded, the dullard rolled around, gasping for air. The Witcher threw the man a casual command. Stay. Then entered the inn. That's excellent. Inside, the group of would-be bandits were gathered around tables, sifting through the trinkets they'd collected from the caravan. The murmur of their conversation simmered to silence as the Witcher entered, and they collectively stared at the intruder. Where are they? The Witcher asked, calm and composed. After a brief moment of surprise, the lanky woman snatched her crossbow from the table. Don't bother! She tautened the string and hurriedly notched a bolt as the Witcher rolled his eyes. Who the heck are you? She demanded. He cracked his neck and placed his hand on the pommel of his sword. Where are they? The woman narrowed her eyes, then nodded to the others, spurring them to spread around the Witcher. What's the plan then? Hold up here, prey on passers-by? How long do you think that'd work before they send the guards and you all dance a jig on the end of a rope? Nah, they're too busy dealing with riots in the city. Droughts cause right anarchy. They ain't coming out here no time soon. No chance. Now piss off and leave us be before I drop you. The Witcher tilted his head, listening intently. He heard muffled voices from down below. Why capture them? Why not just rob them and let them be on their way? It's simpler. Well, her eyes flickered around as she thought. It's none of your fucking business, that's why. She tensed her arm. Last warning, I swear. My advice, the Witcher's grip tightened around the hilt of his sword. Cut your losses and go home. The woman blinked rapidly, considering, then slowly fingered the trigger. Don't, the Witcher warned, bracing himself. Her eyes widened and she'd made up her mind. The Witcher unsheathed his sword. Thwang! The bolt flew. In one fluid stroke, he caught the projectile mid-flight with the flat of his blade. Clang! The bolt reeled sideways through the air and hit one of the gang members in the throat. He let out half a gasp, gargled blood, and then collapsed on the floor. The woman shrieked, ah! Then felt quiet with shock, the crossbow slipping from her fingers. Silence lingered. Then, finally, the Witcher panned over the onlookers, scowling. Anyone else? They immediately dropped their weapons and displayed the palms of their hands in submission, shaking their gawping faces from side to side. A raggedy man stammered, Please, sir. The Witcher casually sheathed his sword. Go on. Fuck off. The band cautiously shimmied towards the front door, their eyes fixed on the Witcher. When they were close enough, they rushed outside, stumbling over each other as they fled. The Witcher looked down at the blood pooling around the unfortunate wretch. He sighed, then clicked his tongue regretfully. Unlucky, pal. He surveyed the room and found a large trapdoor nestled in the corner. A hushed voice came from beneath. Witcher? He lifted the hatch and saw Galanthea at the foot of the wooden ladder peering up. She smiled at the sight of him and nodded with gratitude. The Witcher glowered at her for a moment, then smirked ever so slightly. 2 for 2. Chapter 11 of The Road to Maribor. It's been quite eventful. Atop a shallow bank beside the inn, the Witcher shovelled out another heap of dirt from the grave he was digging. For a moment, he was back within the grounds of Alzur's castle, burying the mutilated bodies of his fallen brethren. The mage's voice echoed in his head. "It's a sorry affair, I know, but it has to be done, my boy, it must." He squeezed his eyes shut, quashing away the memory, and then he resumed his task. Nearby, Galanthea sat upon a bench, hewn out of felled oak, fondly watching the soil-spattered Witcher. "Perhaps he wanted a pyre." He shot her an unimpressed side eye. She smirked. "You're proving quite the knight in shining armour, I must say." He kicked the shovel into the earth with a grunt and scooped out another load. "Perhaps I should dig out my fiddle and compose an epic ballad about your escapades." He huffed. Galanthea pondered for a moment. "Of course, I would have to find some suitable word to rhyme with Witcher," she paused. "Or with Madoc." The Witcher froze, then slowly lifted his head towards her. "He spoke ever so fondly of you the last time we met." The Witcher vaunted out of the grave, threw down the shovel, and took several aggressive slides towards Galanthea. "He tried to meddle in my affairs now, follow me around, that it? What are you, his loyal lapdog?" "Ha! I'm no man's operative, my dear. 'Twas fate alone that entwined our paths. Yet the first moment I laid my eyes upon you, oh, I knew for sure who stood before me." "Horseshit!" The Witcher feigned a guffaw. "Typical! He can't fathom anything big outside of his control, can he?" He scoffed. "Has to pull all the fucking strings." He cracked his neck. "So what? He sent you here to soften me up and coerce me to come crawling back to his fanciful fellowship, huh? Well, it ain't gonna happen. I don't belong there and I never have. It's all a blasted farce. I'm just a killer, a good-for-nothing cutthroat. I'll never be anything more than that." Galanthea let his anger hang, then tilted her head. "Oh, Madoc, why spew shit you know ain't true?" She smiled. "Maybe you're delusional. Or utterly blind." Oh, I love her. "Madoc, see, don't you?" Her eyes grew somber. "You must know, he really wants—" "Fuck off!" "You're so very special to him. You can't imagine, even after all this time, being one of the first—" "I'm not his pet. His fucking plaything." No, of course. He needs to let go, damn it." Galanthea paused, considering her words. "Aye, you're quite right. He does. He needs to let a lot of stuff go. But so do you." She eyed Madoc, then patted the space beside her. "Come, sit." The Witcher's scowl lingered as he clenched his jaw, quivering with frustration. Then he gave in and perched himself on the edge of the bench. "You spend an awful lot of time brooding, don't you?" She let the moment linger, his silence becoming the answer he did not want to give. She continued facetiously, "Oh, woe is me! I'm stuck as a monster, a freak, huh? Well, boo fucking who?" Madoc faced her, taken aback by her tone. "Grow up, lad, and get over it." He glared at her, then veered his gaze out over the prairie. "I always duck the question of why I stopped being a bard. Do you want to know why?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Because it's not a story worth telling, and certainly not one worth hearing. There's no charming adventure to be found, no magical moment or grand finale. Just a simple truth that doesn't sit well with most folks. You see, I never wanted to be a bard in the first place. It was but a self-imposed obligation to honour the memory of those long past. I kept on for decades, singing to strangers and playing that damn fiddle, miserable and unfulfilled. I was propelled onwards by guilt. Surviving when others have not can be it's a heavy burden to bear. But of course, I need to tell you that." The Witcher mumbled something unintelligible. "I was just depriving myself of a life well lived for a futile cause born from penance." "Well, that's on you," the Witcher mumbled. Aye, and it took me a good long time to realise it. You cannot allow the past to dictate your future. It's a hell of a waste of time. To be held prisoner by the dead and buried. Even Alzur, with all of his Witcher longevity, still hasn't figured that one out. He's obsessed with a time long gone, one he cannot let go of. But that's his choice to make. And you, Madoc, have your own." She paused. "Alzur is not the one shaping your claim, my dear. Not for a very long time now." Madoc remained silent, wallowing in thought. "You've been through hell and I feel your pain. I do. But do not make the mistake of thinking you have a monopoly on suffering. Oh, the contrary. You're in quite the privileged position. Most folks have to eke out a sorry existence for a living, barely surviving from one day to the next. They're denied any aspirations, and then poof, they die. And it was as if they were never here at all. But you can go places and do things that most of us could only dream of. You accomplish incredible feats, make the world a better place, and you'll be remembered for it. To renounce that gift because of bad blood and stubbornness, well, it would be a great affront to all those less fortunate. So, I say to you, Alzur and his vision be damned. Heck, your fallen brothers be damned as well. This is about you. Take control of your destiny and shape your future for the better before it's too late. Because Madoc, you are afforded the luxury to do so. The Witcher slouched forward, his eyes glazed over with contemplation. Galanthea held out her hand, palm upturned, then glanced towards the sky. Looks like you best finish that hole of yours. Seemingly from nowhere, slate-grey clouds had assembled across the once spotless sky and a light rain was falling. Something tells me we don't have very long. It is time for the final chapter on the road to Maribor. The innkeeper tumbled out through the front doors and dropped to his knees in the mud, arms extended jubilantly towards the heavens. A miracle, praise be! He closed his eyes and smiled, basking in the refreshing drizzle. So many years forsaken, so many! A thought hit him and he hopped to his feet and rushed back inside. Moments later he reappeared, followed by the halfling and the dwarf, their arms all overflowing with copper pots and pans. Madoc and Galanthea, still sitting upon the nearby hillside, smiled in unison at the sight of them frantically collecting rainwater in the various vessel-like wares. The Witcher's gaze ascended towards the sky. He eyed the clouds warily as they drifted outwards from a singular point in the distance. Strange, he thought. Furrowing his brow, he scratched his bristly throat and cocked his head to the left. Alzur. Aye, Galanthea said after a moment. He brushed away the thought and diverted the conversation. How did he lift your curse? He never said. Galanthea mulled over the question, then sighed sedatedly. That, my dear, is a tale for another time, and one I won't relish the telling of, that's for sure. The Witcher frowned. She smiled softly. Let's just say life sometimes leaves you with no good choices, no clear avenue towards respite, but a choice must always be made and the consequences faced, whatever they may be. You'll do well to remember this, Witcher. Consequences, if shunned, are wont to accrue. And in the end, the piper must always be paid, one way or another. She gazed at some of her travelling companions dancing with glee in the rain outside the inn. Few of us make it through life unsullied, Madoc, and those that do tend to die young. Best we can do is try and balance the scales somehow before we take our final breath. Life is debt. Aye. The sound of joyous celebration was suddenly engulfed by an ear-splitting boom. Rumble! Crack! Flashes of blinding light, both green and red, illuminated the landscape. Madoc jumped to his feet and cast his gaze out across the fields to the horizon, where the walls of the far-off Maribor city could be seen reaching across the fleshly sodden plains. What's he doing? High above, the voluminous clouds tumbled unnaturally across the sky, growing darker as they shifted ominously from the capital. Suddenly, lightning flashed and forked over the dismal vista, swiftly followed by the bellowing rumble of thunder. Light rain gave way to a torrential downpour, and the breeze burst into a stormy gale. The grey-black clouds whirled in the distance, circling a hole in the sky that was opening up. Sinuous rifts of pulsating light veined outwards from the expanding breach, causing a spectrum of vibrant colours dancing across the horizon. Galanthea and Madoc joined the travellers that had congregated on the crossroads to watch the distant chaos unfold. Oh no! Oh no! The halfling mumbled to himself. Oh dear! It's a portal! The dwarf yelled over the sound of belting rainfall. It's just like Elender! Plough in hell! The soldier's face turned white and his eyes widened with disbelief. It cannot be! From deep within the faraway cyclone, an enormous and horrific form snaked downward from the portal. Its giant, elongated body adorned the rows of hooked limbs on either side, wrapped and writhed in the sky, descending upon the city of Maribor. The ground trembled as the most terrible monstrosity crashed into the ill-fated metropolis. The gaping hole snapped shut in its wake, and the spectrum of vivid light faded from existence. All that remained was the blackened clouds, the blackened landscape, and the blackened silhouette of the colossal monster, illuminated by the spasmodic lightning. Each flash revealed a fleeting glimpse of the massive centipede wreaking havoc upon the city, its immense mandibles snapping violently as it constricted its long thorax around protruding towers, shattering and smashing them to rubble. Damn it, Madoc thought. Damn it to hell! He squinted through the rain towards Galanthea, her big brown eyes soft and somber, pleading to him. Go, she mouthed. He needs your help. We all do. Without hesitation, Madoc bounded over to the hitching post and vaulted onto his steed's saddle. Clenching the reins, he turned one last time towards those he had rescued. The halfling was busy using a saucepan to shield himself from the rain. The dwarf was barking something utterly lost amid the backdrop of the now thrashing downpour. The soldier, holding onto the innkeeper for balance, was shaking his head woefully from side to side. Galanthea, her sorrowful eyes betraying her fear, smiled hopefully at the Witcher and nodded with appreciation. Madoc returned the gesture, then pivoted his mount onto the darkened road, spurred the horse on and galloped towards Maribor city. Towards the blackness, towards the lightning, and towards the all-consuming monster and savage ongoing carnage, towards destruction, death, and chaos incarnate. Onwards he rode, towards his maker. Onwards, towards his fate. And that was the road to Maribor. Wow. That was pretty cool. That was pretty damn cool. I really enjoyed this journey. The story's really cool. It crescendos at a point that leaves it teetering on the edge. Are we ever going to get a Madoc journey to find more? Who the hell knows? But I really, really enjoyed that. That was part 12. That's the final part. We're a few weeks out from whatever the next journey's going to be, and I cannot wait to dive into it. There's so many options. Ugh, it's going to be so cool. So yeah, thank you guys for sticking around and listening to it. I really appreciate it. I love reading through the journey stories, and the next one will be available as soon as possible.